Happy Friday. It is 10:01. Good to have you with us. You know, Sports Hub STL is presented by DraftKings. The crown is yours. Brooke, Matthew, Randy.
A long break.
Welcome to the Randy Karraker Show featuring Brooke Grimsley, featuring Matthew Rocchio, and also featuring, if you weren't aware of it, the opening drive.
We used to be on a radio show. I don't know if you knew this or not.
We were?
We were. It feels like forever ago. It was like years ago, something like that.
Years and years ago.
Years ago, decades ago, if you will.
So there was a guy in Iowa that hated Brooke more than me. And I hope he joins us at some point. You got to tell if you have an Iowa friend that hates us, tell him to join us just on the chat. We want you to join us on the chat today. Participate in the show. Bernie Miklasz is going to be with us. Do we have the sophisticated gambler guy back?
No, not today. It's Jacob.
But Jacob Stanoch is going to join us.
Yes, I knew I was going to get it wrong. I was thinking too hard about it. But yes, Jacob Stanoch is joining us today.
I am such a jerk.
To talk about the Frozen Four, because it is really exciting to have the Frozen Four here in town.
It was great hockey last night.
Yeah, Jamal Mayers, his former school, Western Michigan. How about them?
Pretty good.
Yeah.
Former Andy Murray team, Western Michigan, former Blues coach Andy Murray coached them for a decade or so.
They might be knowing what they're doing over there, huh?
Yeah, now they're back.
Yeah.
The Cardinals are home tonight against the Philadelphia Phillies. Plenty of good tickets available if you would like to get down to the ballpark and check out one of the best teams in the National League. Brooke, I kind of think that Philadelphia and the Doyers. Cardinals are a notch below.
I thought we were talking about the Cardinals as the best team.
Cardinals are the most fun team.
Sometimes.
Cardinals are going to be wearing the City Connects tonight.
Oh, yeah, they are doing that. So they're doing, because we went on that radio lunch the other day. They talked about how they're really trying to pump up Fridays.
Yep.
So you got the City Connects, live music, $5 hot dogs and beer,
yep.
I believe.
Up to the, you need to go up to the Budweiser Terrace and go to the Crown Bar for the $5 beer.
That's kind of a good deal.
It's a great deal. Yeah. So it's going to be a fun night.
Yeah.
So let's get down there. There are things we want to see. Obviously, you want to see some change after you go on the road, get swept by Boston, and then you lose 2 out of 3 to the Buccos. You go 1-5 on a road trip, and there are things that you want to change. And I think there's things that they need to change. And they started yesterday by sending Chris Roycroft down and bringing up Rodri Munoz. I'll be interested to see him and just more of the evaluation process.
We knew that with Chris Roycroft that he probably needed to go down. He was scuffling a little bit up here in the majors, and hopefully he'll be able to figure that out down in the minors. But I thought that Munoz was an interesting pick, and I wanted to pick your brain about it because he has a lot of talent, but he is still pretty raw in the sense that he has 5 walks in his last 5 innings. He was a starter prior to this season, correct?
He was, in the Marlins system. The Cardinals got him off of waivers from the Marlins.
So I'm assuming that because of that, maybe they're hoping he can provide length in the bullpen.
I would think so.
Do the walks concern you, though?
Yeah, absolutely. That's why I was kind of surprised that it was him rather than Riley O'Brien. But O'Brien's barely pitched. He only pitched 3 games in spring training and then has pitched, I think, 2 or 3 games there. So he's really not ready to rock and roll, I don't think, yet. And I think they want to get a look at Munoz when the lights are bright, when you've got the upper deck. It's just a different animal when you get to the majors. And I hate doing this every day to you, but they want to evaluate the guy. They want their major league manager and coaches and management staff to evaluate the guy.
I don't think that's a bad thing. Isn't that kind of the approach, the whole reason for the season? But it feels like we have to keep saying that is because I think that people, it's the new patience, right? For fans, I think that they're tired of hearing the patience. Now they're tired of hearing runway and evaluation. They still want to see winning baseball. Yeah. And I think this bullpen has been a big part of this recent skid that we've seen during the road trip, because the ERA for just the team in general, if you look at the pitching staff right now, ranks 29th in the majors with a team 6.27 ERA. And that's pretty rough.
And the bullpen is 24th at 4.94.
Yeah.
So it's everything about the pitching staff right now, because of the road trip, is kind of skewed towards being bad. I think, Brooke, and this is another part of the evaluation process, how do you respond when you're on the road? Now, Pittsburgh was not a hostile environment by any stretch of the imagination.
There was barely anybody there to be any hostility.
No. So I think you just want to see what guys do in that environment. By the way, even after the great start the other day by Eric Fetty, The Cardinals' starting pitching ERA has fallen to last in Major League Baseball.
Ooh.
They are behind the Diamondbacks at 5.43, the Orioles at 5.37. Cardinals' starters' ERA is 5.49.
That's pretty rough.
Yeah.
Ellipsis 150 says Kyle Leahy has been a surprise in the bullpen so far. I know it's early, but so far he has looked pretty good with 7 2/3 with a 1.17 ERA. Yeah, we've been talking about this week that Kyle Leahy is definitely in the bullpen circle of trust right now. But there's not many in there. So outside of Roycroft and bringing up Munoz, is there anything else that you could do to the bullpen? Because we're also about to approach the point here in the season where Steven Matz is going out of the bullpen.
We're looking at a week from now.
Yeah, going into the starting rotation. What else can you do to this bullpen?
I would be inclined, and the Cardinals usually are pretty strident. Once they say something, it happens.
Yes.
They don't change their mind very often.
Unless there's an injury.
Right. But I mean, like if you're going to move a guy from catcher to DH.
Oh, no. Randy, you don't think you think they're already going to back off their plans this early?
I think they should.
They should. They should.
For two reasons. Number one, Matz has maybe been their best overall relief pitcher.
Yeah.
And I hate the idea of taking these guys who have been pitching on 4 days rest every fifth day for years and years, taking them out of that routine. And I know that they protect kids in the minors, but do you really want to have people like Sonny Gray and Miles Michaelis and Eric Fetty? Maybe you do want Michaelis to pitch less. I don't know. But
you can't move him at this point.
You can't. No, and I just want to keep those guys in there. And the most important guys for me actually are Palante and Liberatore. Because when you're ready to go, when your team is going to be good, those guys are going to be pitching every 5 days. You aren't going to be going with a 6-man rotation when your team is good. So I want those guys to stay in routine.
So to your point about the Cardinals saying one thing and then something else happening.
Oh, no, I said that they're very strident about maintaining the integrity of what they say. Everything they say, Brooke, in our history, is that they kind of stick to it.
Question mark. I don't know. Well, and now it makes you wonder why they even wanted to do that plan in the first place. Why not just have Steven Matz be in your bullpen? Why couldn't that have been the plan from the beginning instead of kind of promising him, hey, you're going to have a spot here in the six-man rotation? Is it just to pacify because of the contract?
I think when they started spring training, they didn't expect Matthew Liberatore to pitch as well as he did. And they told him this. We talked to him on this very show about preparing as a starter. I don't think that he really gave that. I think he gave them way more than they expected during spring training. I think that's why Liberatore is in the rotation rather than Matz.
Because he was really big. As you mentioned, you can go back and watch that interview during spring training when we talked to Matthew Liberatore. His whole approach this offseason and mindset going into the season was to be a starter for the starting rotation. He earned it with what he did during spring training. He earned that opportunity. And maybe it was more the Cardinals pacifying him of like, okay, we'll give it a shot. It's probably not going to work. And we're going to slide you back into the bullpen. But now it has worked out. Steven Matz has also looked good out of the pen. Great. He's part of that bullpen trust circle. I'm afraid to take him out of the pen, but you've already kind of backed yourself into a corner by saying that April 16th, he's supposed to be a part of that starting rotation.
Here's the other part is that Matt's in a free agent year. You want him to pitch well as a starter so that he has enhanced value come trade deadline time, because ultimately you're going to trade him. He's not going to be around, and he has much more value as a starting pitcher for a team down the stretch than as a relief pitcher. From Jay Renegade, got to move Wilson Contreras down, in my opinion. He's not part of the youth movement. We're not trying to see what he's made of. I don't disagree with that. I could move him down too.
You got to figure out if he's your first baseman of the future or not, at least. Or do you need to start moving him to the outfield at some point?
Is he here? Is this his third year?
This should be his third year, I believe.
So 3rd out of 5, right?
Yes.
So he'll be here for a couple more years. So I think for the short-term future, he's your first baseman.
I was just thinking about when Ivan Herrera needs to switch positions.
I wonder what position they switch him to.
I don't know. Do you put him at first, or do you try to put him in the outfield? Or
you've already taught one catcher how to play first base.
Yeah.
So you could pull it off. Matthew, what do you got?
I see full Carlos Santana, first base, third base. I think they played him in left field for a little bit. Carlos Santana.
And the first thing that came to mind, and I get the people, including the Cardinals, that say Jordan Walker's too good of an outfielder, too good of an athlete to move into first base. I don't necessarily agree with that. If I could put Herrera in left, Nootbaar in right, Walker at first, I think that would be my move. I'd
The
love to
better
have a
alignment.
6'6" first baseman so that everybody can make bad throws and he can go and get them. He's athletic enough to play the infield. We know that because he played third base
Yeah.
until a couple of years ago. I have seen so many mediocre to bad left fielders, and they've all had spectacular arms that you'd never run on. But I've seen a lot of guys that like.
We're burying that one from yesterday.
Lonnie Smith, Manny Ramirez, Lou Brock wasn't the best thrower in the world. Greg Luzinski wasn't the best thrower in the world. I've seen a lot of guys play left field or world championship teams that were not the best defenders.
Look at here. I mean, I'm looking right now at Carlos Santana, 2014 season with the Indians. He played catcher, first base, third base, and DH.
There you go.
I mean, what's the issue there? What would be the problem with the Cardinals in a game going from Nolan Arenado at third base to Ivan Herrera? How could that go terribly wrong?
I don't think he could.
Yeah, going back to Wilson Contreras, moving him down the lineup, I don't have an issue with that whatsoever. I think that you should at this point. Wilson Contreras' numbers, obviously, he has been struggling, and we mentioned that yesterday. I think that move him out of the 2-hole, maybe he'll find some more success elsewhere. I saw in the chat that some people were talking about maybe having him. Where was that one? I was going to try to find it. Let's see. Moving down Wilson Contreras would be a lot easier if Herrera wasn't out, though. Yes, that does help things too. So then who would you replace Wilson Contreras with? You mentioned Mason Wynn yesterday. I think that would be the best option.
Yeah, I'm putting together my lineup right now, as a matter of fact. So I've got Scott, Wynn, Newt. I think I'm going to hit Arenado fourth. Is that all right with you?
Yeah.
And then when Gorman comes back, let's do Donovan until Gorman comes back, because Donnie Baseball has been.
And it's Nola on the mound today for the Phillies,
who should have come here because we have a free zoo.
That's what. Speaking of Iowa guy, when you mentioned off the top, that was the thing that set him off.
Yeah, he did.
Was the Aaron Nola conversation that we had with him? Apparently, I just ruined any chance of that by mentioning the free zoo.
Right. Yeah, we never had a chance after that. You messed it up. So okay, so my I'm going to lead off with Victor Scott the second. I'm going to hit Mason Wynn second. I'm going to hit Newt Barth third. I'm going to hit Arenado fourth. I'm going to hit Donnie Baseball fifth. I'm going to hit Walker sixth. Then my number 7 hitter, and by the way, I've got something going here that we'll talk about in a moment. Then maybe, do I go Gorman or Burleson?
Yeah, you do have Burley there.
Okay. And then Contreras. And then Pajes, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8.
You have Pajes catching?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So here's my lineup.
Who was your DH again?
At the moment, Burleson.
Okay. That's what I was thinking.
Scott in center, Wynn in at shortstop, Newt in left, Arenado at third, Donnie Baseball at second, Walker in right, Burleson DH, Contreras first base, Pajes catching. Left, right, left, right, left, right, left, right, right.
I don't hate it.
Okay. So Ollie's watching. So that'll be a good lineup.
You said
tonight.
Ollie's watching. Take notes, Ollie.
Yeah. So I kind of like that lineup. And so I've solved our problem with Contreras moving down in the lineup, take a little bit of pressure off of him. I like the top of my lineup. I'm getting a great opportunity to evaluate players. The thing that as I was going through that I was thinking, Brooke, is think of how many games last year that the Cardinals outfield, all 3 of them were in the bottom 4 of your lineup.
Yeah.
You got no offense at all. And you had Goldie and
there was
Arenado,
no pop
right?
from the outfield.
Wynn, Goldie, Arenado, and when he was in there, Donovan, that was like 4 of your top 5 hitters. And now you've got, if you use my lineup, you've got your 1 and 3 hitters in the outfield and then number 6 hitter. So you're getting, with that lineup, and those guys are all hitting, by the way, you're getting more production out of your outfield this year than you got last year.
I still like Jordan Walker in the outfield. I know that we talked about him at first base eventually, but do you feel like that ship has sailed already for him?
Him playing first?
Yeah.
I don't think so. I think we have to wait until Chaim Bloom takes over.
And see.
And see what he likes.
Yeah. And another big story to look at here, too, is Nolan Gorman is eligible to come off the IL. So who goes down in his place? You would look at, I would assume, Thomas Ajayci or Michael Ciani. Should it be Ciani who goes down? He has options left. I don't know how many.
It seems like they really like to put him in the outfield in the late innings, though.
So then that makes
Yeah.
Thomas Saggese a little bit more expendable.
And if Gorman is here and Saggese is here, are you going to get Saggese enough at bats to help him get better?
And I don't disagree with that, but I definitely saw a lot of fans talking about that yesterday, where it's like, well, Saggese, you talk about runway, you want to give these younger players opportunities. Thomas Saggese is a younger player that you want to give opportunities to, but I do understand the argument of there's just not enough at bats for him right now.
There aren't enough at bats, even if he's not here.
Yeah,
there aren't enough at bats to go around.
No.
So I think I would be inclined to send him back. By the way, one other thing, last night from Memphis, Jimmy Crooks, the minor league player of the year for the Cardinals last year, catcher, homered and doubled, drove in 6 in an 8-3 win over Nashville. And Michael McGreevy went 5 innings, allowed a couple of runs, 7 hits, a walk, 4 strikeouts, 69 pitches for McGreevy for the Memphis Redbirds. And Quinn Matthews pitches for Memphis tonight.
Ooh, that'll be interesting to watch.
Yeah,
so the
keep an eye
young
on that.
guys, Ace 6583 Rob says, why are they fighting their self with just bringing up McGreevy?
Well, number one, he hasn't pitched well down there. I thought that he should have made the team out of spring training, but again, with this rotation, the way it's set up, and they still have the guys on their team. They still have Gray, they still have Miklasz, they still have Fetty. They want to give Liberatore an opportunity, and they still have Palante. So there really wasn't a spot and they have Matz to be their 6th guy. So they decided we want to give McGreevy a little bit more time down there, and we'll bring him up when he's ready and when somebody gets hurt here. And that's why McGreevy isn't here yet. He'll be here at some point during this season.
I think that a lot of people, just based off the chat, Randy, they want to see Miles Michaelis gone.
Yeah,
and
they do.
So that's part of the McGreevy conversation is, what do you do with Miles Michaelis? There's nothing that you can do with Miles Michaelis. We talked about that. We talked about the DFA. I know that fired up Derek Gould in that whole discussion the other day. I don't think that you can just eat that Miles Michaelis contract at this point.
Not in the DNA of this organization.
No. Should they, though?
Well, no, they shouldn't. I mean, think about this, Brooke. Okay, so figure, and we hear this all the time. People talk about how expensive it is to go to a baseball game, right?
Mm-hmm.
So what do you think? If you come to the ballpark, do you figure that for each person you're spending an average of $50?
I would say so. Even if it's like tonight, $5 hot dog and beer night.
Right. Think about a $10 ticket, though.
Yeah.
You get a couple of beers. That's 10. So 20. Let's go $20 ticket, couple of beers. That gets you up to 30, 35 for. Maybe you get 2 hot dogs. Maybe get up to 40. Let's just assume you spend $50 a person. That's probably a conservative estimate for what each person spends when they come to the ballpark. From the end of 22 to the end of 25, the Cardinals are anticipating losing 1 million fans. 1 million fans a year.
And their reasoning is
right?
Yeah.
Because that they drew 3.4 million. They're budgeting for about 2.4.
Yeah.
That's $50 million.
I guess the argument for some fans would be, then why don't they try to re-engage the fans to bring them back more in the ballpark? But they're trying with these specials and stuff. But I feel like a lot of the fan base, it could be picked on with payroll. Payroll is the issue that's holding them back.
Well, the revenue is holding them back.
Yeah.
Go to games and you'll get better players.
If you want better players, you have to go to the games. I was actually looking at the tickets yesterday, and there was plenty available for really good prices.
This is going to be a bad homestand for attendance.
You think so? It's going to be worse than what we've seen recently?
Yeah.
Where it was like 20,000, 21,000?
Yeah.
That's rough.
Yeah. But here's another thing is you at your house, Matthew at your house, you guys are cord cutters, right? You've gotten rid of cable. You've got so a lot of people have a platform that doesn't allow them to get Cardinal baseball because of like YouTube TV. They don't have FanDuel, right? And there's a lot of places. I think the Dish doesn't have FanDuel. So the Cardinals have missed out on marketing their product to a lot of people on TV over the years. And it's gotten worse and worse and worse in terms of the number of people that have the ability to watch the games. And that's one of the reasons that my other job is at Matrix Midwest. That's one of the reasons the Cardinals have moved games to free television, is because this allows everybody to watch a game for free. And I think one of the things that happened, Brooke, is that baseball teams started looking at television as a revenue source rather than a marketing tool. And I think now we're getting back to it being on free TV. And this isn't just for here, it's in a lot of different markets. Games are back on free TV so that you can have the players out there, you can market your team with promotions, and the game will be accessible to more people. That's also a product of not having the blackouts, so that they'll buy more tickets. I think the free commercial that has been utilized has gone away for the last 15 years here. And I think getting something like that back will benefit every team.
But how does it benefit, say, like the younger people like me who don't even have cable? It's not like I'm going to go get cable to watch free TV again.
That's free TV. It's not. All you have to do is plug in a $10 antenna. It's not cable.
I'm not doing that. I'm not going to go get an antenna. That's extra work.
Okay.
That people don't like to do the extra work now.
I think that comes back to then people just not caring enough to watch the game.
I'm saying I think a lot of people still would not be on board with getting like a free antenna just to go see it. I think
watch
that
10 games a year
I don't know. Maybe some people do. Maybe I feel like a lot of people, if it's a challenge in any way, they won't do it. But I think that there is a lot of different streaming options, and so I think that's what helps.
And that's a baseball problem, because football, people have no problem with every game being available, almost every game now, on free TV. And if it took you a $10 antenna, $15 antenna on Amazon that you just simply screw into the back of your television, that's your challenge. That's all you have to do. If you needed that to watch college football or the National Football League, you do it.
Yeah. I feel like I always find a way to find the games anyway, so via streaming.
Pirating.
Yeah, there is that's out there, Randy. It does happen.
So, we're going to have Bernie on the show today. Looking forward to that. By the way, we have Cards Hub 365 pregame at 1:00. The Cardinals taking on the Phillies tonight at 7:15. Joe Roderick and Ryan Fagan have the pregame, and then postgame tonight after the Cards and the Phillies, Stephen Carey and Sarah Daly will have the postgame right here on Sports Hub STL. So we're looking forward to that. A great day of Cardinal coverage here on Sports Hub STL. Do we have the big boy yet? We're
not yet. He until 10:30. Yes.
Oh, 10:30 today. Okay.
10:30.
We're still 7 minutes away.
So what would you guys consider, and everybody can weigh in on the chat too, what would you consider a successful homestand here? Because you have very tough opponents. You have the Phillies coming to town, and then you have the Astros, which I know that some people can point to haven't been exactly perfect to start the season.
But they've got good pitching, and they've got a pretty good lineup. I would say 2-4. If you win 1 out of 3, I would think that would be my expectation. If you go 3-3 on the homestand, I would say that that's a success.
Yeah, I think that would be a good success. I just want to see, I think specifically, would love to see Willson Contreras pick things up at the plate. I think that would be considered a success in my book. In any way possible, just him kind of getting his groove back at the plate. We mentioned him scuffling a little bit. Maybe Miles Miklasz bounces back tomorrow. To fingers crossed.
He has said that's the kind of the way his career has gone.
He also said, he said a bad year than a good year. Well, it's kind of been some bad years back to back. He did have 15 quality starts last season, so that was a positive.
Right,
But
I think this is an interesting chat note from Ellipsis 150. In my heart, I feel like it's Mozeliak's pride and ego as to why Liberatore keeps continuing to get opportunities after 4 years. How about the fact that he's pitching well?
Yeah.
He's pitching well for the Cardinals.
There's
He's got
a lot
ability.
of people who want Matthew Liberatore to be back in the bullpen just because of the bullpen struggles, but he deserves this opportunity. You mentioned, we have to keep talking about it. You mentioned at the beginning of the show, this is an evaluation season for players. You have to know what you have with these guys. Why not just kick the tires with Matthew Liberatore being a starter? He has that ability to do so.
He does. And you want to see progress. You want to see him figure out why he has the one rough inning every outing. It's not like he's getting lit up. He has a rough inning. It's like my golf game. I have a disaster hole every round. I have to have at least a disaster hole.
You could call it the Matthew Liberatore hole now.
Right. Yeah. But here's the thing. If you put Matthew Liberatore on the market today, I'll bet there's 23, 24 teams that would love to have Matthew Liberatore on their pitching staff.
Because we've seen that, especially the Dodgers do a great job of this, is where maybe they pick up a pitcher who's kind of scuffling a little bit, and then they are so bought in and they have spent so much money, time on building up their development program with their major league pitchers and minor league pitchers that they know that they can get the most out of them.
Remember when Lance Lynn went over there a couple of years ago?
Yeah.
And just lit it up for like the first month he was there. they do find flaws that pitchers have, and then they wind up fixing them. Ellipsis 150. Randy, the point I'm making is Liberatore has had such a long leash because I think Mo is desperate to be right in that trade. There's not one other pitcher in the organization that has had as long of a leash that Liberatore has had. Number one, I thought he was really good out of the bullpen last year.
He was.
And number two, they're keeping him because of his perceived ability, which I don't think is belief shared only by the Cardinals. I think there are a lot of teams, a lot of people in baseball that feel like Liberatore has ability. And I don't think he's been horrible by any stretch of the imagination. As a matter of fact, I think if they would have done this with Matthew Liberatore 3 years ago, he might be a lot further along than he is right now.
Yeah, haven't we talked about in the past that Matthew Liberatore, and he's not the only one that hasn't really gotten a fair shake at the position that he wants to be in, because they kind of did it last year where he was able to be a starting pitcher, but it wasn't the proper amount of rest days. It was kind of like he was like just thrust into that spot, and they were kind of treating him like a swing man, and it wasn't a defined role. I like that this season they actually gave him a defined role, and they said, this is your job until you lose it for whatever reason.
And the other thing I would do with him is every time he throws, I would have Pages behind the plate. He likes he told us that Pages is his favorite pitcher to ever throw to, or catcher to ever throw to. And he threw to Yachty, and he likes throwing to Pages more than anybody else he's ever thrown to. So I'm more inclined to give him the opportunity. I don't think relieving one night and doing an emergency start the next day is a great way to get an opportunity or a great way to evaluate a pitcher. So I'm willing to give Liberatore, especially in a season like this one, the benefit of the doubt.
It's a runway season. It's a transition evaluation season. Rip It Up Card said successful homestand would be Walker keeps improving, Wynn stays hot, Victor moving up in the lineup, Gorman coming back and ending up in the 3-hole. That is success for the homestand and season. I think it's a really good point of, I'm just looking at kind of individual things for players this season. That's how I'm approaching this entire season, not just this homestand, but also this season.
That's smart. And then let's see how everything plays out if the guys play 130 games. And when they played 6 months, if Lars Nootbaar has played 130 games, if Jordan Walker has played 130 games, if Mason Wynn has played 130 games, now you have a sample size that gives you an idea of what their capabilities are.
Yeah, I agree.
So I'm with you there. And I hate the fact that, what have they gone? 2-7 since the start?
Mm-hmm.
But that is what it is. And they just, at this point, aren't good enough. The other part of it is, as we know, the Cardinals have misevaluated talent in the past. You will know whether or not these guys have talent by the time this season is complete. The talent might not translate into being great baseball players, but at least you'll know whether or not they're capable of being good baseball players.
It's kind of like how people just want to go ahead and move on from Nolan Gorman. We discussed that at the beginning of the season too, where we had this conversation. I've seen it too, of people still bring up of you need to move on from Nolan Gorman. This is the season to figure out if he's part of that group you're talking about, if he does have talent or not. This is a make it or break season for Nolan Gorman.
Does Nolan Gorman become the left-handed Tyler O'Neill?
I hope not. Well, Tyler O'Neill, when he's in, he's great.
That's what I mean.
But he could be, honestly.
Yeah.
You need the power to come from somewhere on this team, though.
Right. And
that's the thing.
He's the one guy on this team, the one young guy where the power is there. I hope the power gets there with Jordan Walker, but I don't know. And Burleson, hopefully he can do it for a whole season. We haven't seen a ton of power from him yet this year, have we?
No, we haven't.
Not compared to what he had delivered in the first half last year. So I'm with you. I think that Gorman is a guy that we need to see because he's really the only guy that has that opportunity.
Jeff Miller says, I'd like to know this. How in the world do the Cards justify not having Matz in the rotation right now?
Well, they have 3 days off in the first 15 days of the season. And they just want to pitch other people.
The Cardinals actually have a plan, and they were honest about it, and they're sticking to it. And you're still complaining about something like that's even if you disagree with the plan, you got to at least be confident in the fact that the Cardinals expressed a plan and are following through on the plan.
And here's the thing: if you have a 6-man rotation and you have 3 off days in 2 weeks, you got people every 7th and 8th day. It's just not doable, I don't think, to have it that way. I liked this one from Ace 6583 Rob. First, I like your name. I think that's just great that you allowed YouTube to make it up. but he said, tell you right now, I'm knocking out 2 hot dogs tonight. A6583. Hey, let us tell you something about the hot dogs at Busch Stadium. If you go to the Ford Plaza in the outfield, they've got this new hot dog stand.
Oh, yeah.
And you can get like a brisket hot dog. I think I'm going to get one of these tonight, Brooke.
Are you going to get the specialty hot dog?
Oh, yeah, the big ones.
Oh, yes. I'm surprised you're not going to go to International Walk.
It's right next door.
Yeah.
I like it. I'm kind of like Ace 6583 Rob. I just want to get one of those big wieners and put it in my mouth.
Oh my God! What the hell just happened?
Should we get to Bernie now? What in the world just happened?
I'm getting
Randy,
a hot dog. Don't people eat the foot-long hot dogs
Clip that,
anymore?
Please clip that and make that a GIF on X, please.
Let's see Bernie. Where's Bernie?
Usually, Rockio is not somebody who is at a loss for words, but you shocked him enough, Randy. he can react to that.
Oh, there he is.
I have to go. I can't do this. I have to go. So.
Isn't that a nice intro, Bernie?
Yeah, I tell you what, man. Randy Karraker, you just never know. Do never underestimate the man and what he might actually say. So,
oh my gosh.
So, okay, Bernie, I actually was calling for you to check in the other day because we were talking about the wackiness of the 1985 football Cardinals locker room and how guys were getting stuff stolen. Remember that?
Oh my, absolutely. Because I got up in the middle of that, and it was not an easy story to write about. I had everybody in there hating me, basically. So, and I was a pretty young beat writer at the time. Do you want the you want the story or
yeah,
some of the
story?
Stuff?
Yeah.
Well, that team, as we know, was very much hyped going into 1985 because they looked great down the stretch in 84. In fact, I covered, working in Baltimore, I covered that famous game where the Cardinals beat the Redskins at RFK Stadium. They go to the playoffs. It was a great game. Cardinals fell short. But I think everyone was thinking, and it's like all the magazines and everything else, but this team could win the NFC Championship in 85. And they just had a horrible, horrible season. It just fell apart. And there were undertones, and I had some good sources on the team, and they're telling me you need to check into some things. You need to ask some questions about what's going on in here. I said, "What are you talking about?" I said, "This you wouldn't believe it, but I can't tell you, but I'm giving you a lead." And sure enough, I was able to ascertain that it was so bad in that locker room that players were stealing from each other during practice. Like if somebody it was during a break or something and they were able to go to the locker room or whatever, guys would get back and this stuff was missing. And as it turned out, there were some thefts of jewelry and things like that in the locker room because there were a couple of players that were, had to feed their cocaine habit. So that team was just rampant. And I don't want to besmirch everybody, but there was a unhealthy percentage of the team that was all caught up in the wrong things to the point where they're actually stealing from each other in the locker room. I mean, and there were 3 or 4 of those guys eventually went into rehab, and it was just a mess. It cost the late great dear Jim Hanifin his job. And remember Randy at the end of the season, Bill Bidwill fired Hanifin. But no one knew that yet until the coaches tried to get to their offices at Busch Stadium, the old Busch Stadium, and the locks had been changed. So instead of calling Hanifin to say, "Look, Jim, we got to make a change," they just changed the locks.
Yeah,
and that was
so Hanny had taken the coaching staff out for a drink, and was Wayne Severe the special teams coach?
I think he was.
I think so. And he had so it's the night of the Mizzou Illinois game. It's December 22nd. And Severe says, "Oh man, I left my wife's Christmas present back in the office. Let's go back." So they go back to the office to go in and get his wife's Christmas present, and they can't get in because the doors are locked.
What?
Yeah, that's how they fired him. That's how they knew they were fired.
Yeah.
It was just a brutal season, and so much was going on there behind the scenes, and I don't even know that I got to the bottom of it. Frankly, it was probably some other terrible things going on, but the team just totally out of control. And what could have been? I mean, the other thing is Hanny and Neil Lomax were not getting along at all.
No.
And I wrote a story about that. I thought Jim Hanifin was going to kill me. He confronted me in the locker room, and it was pretty ugly. He did not like that story at all. But the story was accurate, and Jim Hanifin later said, "You know what? You were right. I was just pissed off. I didn't want to I didn't want to admit to the fact that we basically couldn't stand each other during that whole year." So anyway, it was a tough season.
And Hanny was pretty open about his disdain for Lomax until the day he died. I don't think
it's true. Yeah.
He never really forgave Neil.
Wow.
So Neil is super talented, but again, Bernie Miklasz is the first guy into those rooms after the games, and after a tough loss. Not that there's anything wrong with being religious, but Neil would pin the loss on God's will.
Yeah.
Right. And you just can't do that if you're the quarterback of an NFL team.
And go, yeah, Brooke, it's true. Yeah, he would just say, well, God's will, it's all in his hands. And, and I would very politely try to suggest, well, actually Neil, I'm not trying to be disrespectful, but actually the ball is in your hands. You're the quarterback. And he took that the wrong way. He didn't like that, but it's true. You know what, Randy, I once consulted with a man I know that we both respected very much, Walt Enoch, who was the head of the Fellowship of Christian Athletes. And he worked with a lot of the teams. And I said to Walt, I'm not trying to put you on the spot, but as a sports writer, what should I think when any guy tells me the outcome of a game? Well, it's God's will. And Walt basically said, that's ridiculous. No, you can't use that as an excuse. That's just not right. You have to take responsibility for your performance and how it affected the income. That's up to you to control. So even the great Walter Enoch, wonderful man, great Christian, said, "Nah, get that out of here. That's not cool. That's not cool."
I got to tell you a quick story along these lines. You remember, and Bernie, you covered this series, the Bulls and the Jazz, okay? And remember how Larry Miller, the owner of the Jazz, wouldn't go to games because he was a Mormon and Mormons couldn't work on Sunday?
Right.
So I get a phone call from my buddy Big Frank one Sunday when Larry Miller's not there. Bulls are playing the Jazz in the NBA Finals. And he says, "Why isn't the guy showing up? Hell, God's playing in the game."
What a great line. What a great line. No, so yeah, I just I love covering that team, but and then the thing, the maybe the part two of the story is that Bill Bidwell, when he was trying to decide who to hire as coach, Bill Bidwell told Gene Stallings, he said, "One of the reasons I'm drawn to you, and I got to tell you, you have a reputation to be a very tough coach, and you will push the players, and if there's any problems, you will take care of it." And Stallings, as he told me later, he said, "Bill, I guarantee you, if there's any problems in the locker room, I'll get those rats out of there and I'll deal with it." Just so knowing that knowing that his mission, as given by the owner, was to be tough on that team, right? Mm-hmm. You remember this, Randy, and a lot of the old timers, right? The first practice in training camp. And I'm not exaggerating. It had to be about 98 degrees. It was just a brutal sauna-like day. Gene Stallings would not give the players water, but by now would get a guy. So you do something like that today, you're fired, you're sued. He wouldn't give them water, and like the team doctors were going over to Gene and the trainers, like, coach, we got to get some water in these guys. They're wilting out there. This is dangerous. He said, "Nope." He blew the whistle. He said, "Get him going again. Get him going again." He wouldn't give him water. So I remember talking to Stallings after. I said, "Gene, what are you doing, man? I mean, the coach. Suppose somebody had keeled over or something. You can't." He says, "Yeah, the owner wants me to be tough, and I'm going to show him right from the beginning, and I'm tough. Things are different around here, Yeah. And love Gene Stallings.
Background though. Do a search for the Junction Boys, Bear Bryant's Junction Boys. And Gene Stallings was one of those guys. There's a movie, isn't there? I think there's a movie. And Bear Bryant did it to them. And so he thought that was just a normal thing to do.
I said to Gene, just tell me all I need to know about the Junction Boys, Bear Bryant's first camp. You're one of the players. He said, "Well," he said, "I'll put it to you this way. He said, the bus taking us from campus down to Junction, about 52, 54 guys on that bus. And by the time we packed up and came back to campus, there was about 23 guys on that bus. And
Oh my God.
I said, what do you mean? He said, guys were they were just escaping camp. They were leaving in the middle of the night. You'd look at somebody say, well, where's my roommate? Well, he probably ran away with the other ones. Guys were just like running away from the camp. So,
Oh my God.
so that's
incredible.
Gene Stallings. There's another Gene Stallings show I can't say. One of my favorite Gene Stallings. Let's put it this way. Remember when the Cardinals were having a long snapper problem, right? They just kept screwing up field goals because they didn't have a snapper. And Stallings was irate, and he kept begging Bidwell. He said, listen, I got a snapper out there, and this guy is really good. And it's going to cost a little money to get him to come out of retirement, but he's really good. And Bidwell kept saying, no, no, no. So they lost a game in Philadelphia on a botched snap, on a field goal attempt. And Bill Bidwell goes in the locker room, and Gene Stallings says, Bill, what do I have to do to get you to give me that snapper? Bill, you tell me what I got to do, and I'll do it. And then he offered to do something, which you would a coach would not normally offer to do to the owner of the team. It had something to do with, I'll just put it to you this way. He said, Bill, if you want me to get down on my knees right now, okay, you can figure out the rest, okay? You all can figure out the rest. So he actually said that to Bill Bidwell. And people, I mean, that was one of my favorite crazy stories ever.
Oh,
right?
Yeah, unbelievable. And Gene Stallings, maybe the most God-fearing, quality individual I've ever met in my life. Just a great human being. Highly competitive, though. So there's an NFL strike in 1987, and the Cardinals play at San Francisco, and this is right in the middle of the Niners dynasty. And Eddie DeBartolo has paid, the owner of the 49ers at the time, paid his regular players to come back. So Jerry Rice is there, Roger Craig is there, Joe Montana starting at quarterback. And Bill Bidwell certainly wasn't going to pay any of his guys to come back and cross the picket line. Mm-hmm. So they didn't. So the Cardinals had a quarterback named Sammy Garza from UTEP, Texas El Paso.
Yep.
Wound up being a scout in the NFL for a long time. And the Cardinals go down there and play them close. I think they lost by 13 or 6 or something like that. And so I have to go down after the games and do an interview with Coach that will air on KMOX the next morning. And so I go down, and Stallings is still livid because of what happened to it. He lost with replacements, and he lost a close game. And so, hey, Coach, you ready to do this? Close the door, Randy. I said, okay, close the door, because we didn't want to do it. And I said, man, what a performance by you guys. You should be so proud. Randy, who would you rather have as your blanking quarterback? Joe Blanken Montana or Sammy Blanken Garza? And he never cursed.
No, I mean, see, Bill Bidwell did something I don't think anybody else could ever do. He got Gene Stallings to drop F-bombs all over the place. Without hesitation. And he got he got Gene Stallings to offer to perform a certain service. To get a long snapper, I mean,
that's insane.
And I spent a day when I was working in Dallas. I spent a day with Gene and his family. Actually, it was a day and a half at their ranch in Paris, Texas. Mm-hmm. And my goodness, when it was one of the most enjoyable days I ever had, because I was working a Father's Day story about Gene and his son John Mark, and just to spend a full day with that entire family. It was one of those things where I walked away from it to get in the car to go home. And I really said this. I said, I've really got to try hard to become a better person. Because, I mean, you're just surrounded by all of them. And you're just like, my goodness, what a great, great family. What great people. So I love Gene Stallings. He's still hanging in there. I love him a lot. And then if we do story time down the road a little bit, I'll explain to everyone about how I played a role, not willingly, not knowingly, but I played a role in Gene Stallings getting the Alabama job. Won a national championship.
Wow.
Yeah, we'll do
By
that
the way,
sometime.
Going back to that game, I wanted to double check. They did lose by 6, 34-28. Sammy Garza, 10 of 17 for 177, a touchdown and 2 interceptions. And if I recall, he might have had a red zone interception late that cost the Cardinals an opportunity to win the game against the vaunted real 49ers. All right. So fun stuff.
Story time. With
Yep.
Randy and I,
I enjoyed it.
Brooke, Randy and I got a million of those things.
We got a million of them.
I could listen
Got
to
a
him
million
all
of them.
day because I love the behind the scenes stuff. I mean, it's incredible. Those stories are just absolutely nuts to hear.
Randy and I both, we've been around a long time, and we've also been fortunate to cover greatness. I mean, true greatness.
Yeah.
Amazing things. But we've also had, over the since the mid 80s, let's say, right? When I first got to St. Louis, we've also had the opportunity to cover some truly eccentric, colorful characters, that did wacky things and said crazy things and did just that stuff is as much fun as watching like really great teams, because you just meet all these characters along the way.
Bernie, it'll shock you to know that this name came up and that he's still talking about hanging in there. Last week was Alberto White's birthday.
Ooh. Ooh.
Alberto White was a Rams defensive end in 1996. Rams lose in Baltimore, and he just went nuts in the locker room, went off on Bernie.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. Just going crazy. Accusing me of all kinds of horrible things. And so did you ever hear the follow-up to that, Randy?
No.
So he was threatening me in the locker room, and I don't know why it was me, but it was me. He decided I was the guy. Said all these awful things. He was threatening me and everything. So I just, the things like that, you can't you can't elevate the anger. You have to just keep your calm and just take it, because there's just no point in starting a ruckus. It's something you don't do. So this was like roughly a year later, and I get a call from the director of NFL security. And the director of NFL security said, listen, we want to make you aware of something. There was a player for the Rams, and he's having some issues, and he is saying a lot of crazy things, and he's putting a lot of these crazy things in writing, and he's threatening to basically assassinate certain people, and you're on the list. I'm like, what? Come again? Did I just hear what you said? And I said, come on. He said, we're advising you to take this seriously. So can you imagine go like through like for a year, I'm like looking over my shoulder everywhere I go, because at that point, I hope Alberto White's doing great today. I really do. But when you get the NFL doesn't screw around. When they have a head of security, the guy is great at what he does. And they're saying, well, we would advise you to take this seriously. I said, well, what am I supposed to do? What am I going to have to hire a bodyguard? Or what are you talking? He said, well, we're just telling you, just be aware. And that was a really strange experience in my career.
Yeah.
Really
I
strange.
would say so.
Yeah.
Strange and scary.
And that Baltimore game, because we came back in for Rich Brooks's press conference the next morning, and the first thing he said was, we can't have that sort of behavior, and they cut Alberto White. That wound up being the last game he played. Yeah, in the NFL. All right. And
again, I mean this. I really mean this sincerely. He was not well, and I hope he, in effect, got the help that he needed, because, I don't think that the person that said or did those things, that wasn't the real guy. That was that was some form of mental illness that just kicked in and he couldn't shake it. So I hope he's well. I really do.
Yeah, well, those are, great stories, Bernie. I could listen to it all day. Of course, while we have you here, though, we have to talk about some Cardinals baseball. You have an article out on sportshubscl.com right now that all of our listeners right now and watchers can go and check out. And your latest one is talking about your early season concerns. And I think the bullpen is one that a lot of us are looking at right now. You pointed out in your article that during this 2-7 tumble for the Cardinals bullpen has a 6.08 ERA, and they have been struggling mightily. We've seen that. We were discussing this earlier in the show, Bernie, but can they go to that 6-man rotation as planned with Steven Matz moving out of the bullpen, going into the starting rotation, which is supposed to happen this coming week?
I don't see how. I mean, because the starters are not giving them enough innings now where they're getting stretched. The bullpen's getting worn down. And granted, there were 4 extra innings games. 7 other losses, 4 of them been by extra innings. And that happened in a hurry. And that's a lot of innings. Extra innings that literally relief the bullpen's got to provide. But I think you go to a 6-man rotation, unless 4 of those 6 men are giving you, more than 5 innings per start. And if you look at their averages, and I looked that up yesterday, the one guy that's giving you innings as a starter so far is Liberatore. He's averaging over 6 innings per start. The other guys are right at 5 or even below 5. So when you put Matz in the bullpen or you put him in the rotation, I'm not trying to cheap shot him, but he's not exactly, Mr. Durability. What confidence do we have that he's going to give them 6+ innings per start? So you may have an extra starter in your rotation, but it's going to mean, I think, more work for your bullpen. And I don't think that's a positive thing. So what's the alternative? What do you guys think? Do you cancel the plans for the 6-man bullpen? Do you, if you go with the 6-man 6-man rotation, do you say, okay, we're going with it, except Matz is in the rotation and Miklasz will be the guy that we give the ball to as a last resort? What would you guys do if you haven't said it already? Because I couldn't get on to watch the start of the show, and I apologize.
Yeah, the only thing that we could think of is just abandoning the plan. But then you worry about pacifying Steven Matz. He does have the contract. You have him here for a reason, and he wants to be, I assume, a part of the starting rotation. I'm sure that he's bought into that plan too. So I don't know exactly how you pacify that situation.
And if you're giving me or most sound-minded people a choice, I would rather have Matz in the rotation than Miklasz. And I know that Miklasz is not cut out to be, a middle reliever. He can't get guys to swing or miss or strike him out. His last 12 starts, he's got a 6.99 ERA going back to last August, and the lowest strikeout rate and swing and miss rate in the league, in the major leagues, and also the highest ERA. And I asked Ali Marmol on KMOX, I said, listen, with all due respect, I know you have a tough job, but there's nothing there that tells me he has the tools now that he can turn things around. I mean, how does he survive? How does he possibly become more competitive when he's got the worst ERA, the worst strikeout percentage, and the worst swing and miss rate in the major leagues? How do you work with that? How do you make a guy better that's got that profile? And, Ali said, I understand what you're saying. And he basically said, at some point, it's going to have to get better. So I think that was his way of saying they're not going to ride with this all season unless something changes. So we'll see how that develops. But
Bernie, you would think that a guy like that, because Busch Stadium is a hard place to hit in, you'd think he'd have more success at home than on the road. But last year and so far this year, last year his earned run average at home was 6.16. On the road, it was 4.63. So he's not really, for a guy who doesn't miss bats, utilizing the spaciousness and the difficulty to hit in a Busch Stadium either.
Yeah, that's so true. And he's kind of an enigma. And the thing of it is, I always have to wrestle with this kind of thing. Whenever you see a contract go bad, the first thing you do is to rip the player. Now I'll rip the player based on performance. But the thing I always want to point out is like, well, the player didn't give himself the contract, right? The player didn't go in and say, well, this is the contract. That's it. You have to give me this. And okay, I will. Someone gave him the contract. So, and it went bad. And I don't think Miles Michaelis is happy with the way he's pitching. He tries to keep an upbeat mood, but I just think it's run its course. And at some point, you just can't keep Michael McGreevy down in Memphis. And when Quinn Matthews gets rolling, his first couple starts, he walks some guys, and that's okay. When both of those guys get rolling, you can't hold them back. Now, some people would argue that McGreevy should be here right now. I understand why he's not, but I would never push back on anybody who says that he should be here right now.
Bernie, the Phillies are in town, and the Phillies are just a really well-built team by Dave Dombrowski. Not many free agent starting pitching contracts work out very well. We talked about this yesterday on the show, but Zach Wheeler has worked out very well for them. The Cardinals will face Nola tonight. He hasn't been great yet so far. And then Sanchez and then Wheeler. They have a really good lineup. There aren't many flaws to that Philadelphia roster, are there?
No, I don't think so. And the early returns look like the bullpen's better. They've done everything except win a World Series. It's strange because they've been very, very good. But after the year that they got there, it was a situation where if they got there, and now I'm drawing a blank.
It was a couple of years ago, 22.
That's right. Okay, the last 2 years have kind of been disappointing because they never followed through with that to make the real breakthrough, because they are a championship caliber team. But that, as we learned in the early Tony La Russa years, until they finally won a World Series in 2006. Just because you're great in the regular season, you're not assured of anything. Maybe the Dodgers are the exception, but there is still some randomness in the postseason. But the Phillies are as dangerous as anybody out there, short of the Dodgers. But there's been some great developments in baseball with some of the teams that are winning, like San Diego and the San Francisco Giants. And maybe the Cardinals will be able to turn things around. But this losing 7 out of the last 9 was kind of depressing because there were a lot of people buzzing about the team. And, they kind of handed that back. But if they can win 2 out of 3 from the Phillies, and no, I'm not delusional, I would never bet $2 on that. But if they do, that's how you bounce back and prove, hey, that stuff we were saying about ourselves, we think we're pretty good. Don't underestimate us. Well, the only way to back that up is to do something unexpected, and beating the Phillies in this series would be something unexpected.
Bernie, the 5 best records in Major League Baseball belong to the San Diego Padres, managed by Mike Shildt, the San Francisco Giants, managed by Bob Melvin, the Dodgers, who have the $500 million payroll, the Texas Rangers, managed by Bruce Bochy, and the Philadelphia Phillies, managed by Rob Thompson. And by the way, the Angels are 6th, managed by Ron Washington.
I didn't see that one coming.
I didn't either. There does seem to be a common denominator, though, when you try to look at the teams that are performing the best right now. It seems like old school works.
It does. I do think those teams, every single one of them, I don't think the Phillies as much as some of the others. But like when Bruce Bochy took the Texas job, one of the reasons he took the Texas job is that he trusted Chris Young, and Chris Young and him have a great relationship. And Bochy was very open-minded about using analytics, and he's incorporated them, not to the point where he's like going on and on and on about it, but he appreciates the information, he puts it to use. I think Shilt's a guy like that too. I assume Bob Melvin's that kind of guy because he worked for Oakland and they started all of this. Mm-hmm. So, and Dave Roberts has adjusted to what Andrew Friedman and that analytics department, all the great information they give their managers, and they have a collaboration with the front office, and it works great for them. So Dave Roberts my point is, and I'm not saying you're wrong, Randy, I'm not saying that at all, but my point is all of these managers are old school guys. But the great thing about every single one of them is they're also willing to embrace, to a point, the really good information that can help them win. They don't just reject it,
Bernie, I go back to what Tony La Russa always told us: they're men, not machines. I had this talk with Joe Torre on opening day, and he embraced analytics too. He says you've got to be able to use them as a tool. Information is a good thing, but at the end of the day, Mike Shildt with the ball talk, with being a manager of people, I think is more important than being a manager of numbers.
Well, that's right, and I think when you win, and you win a lot, Dave Roberts has won 2 World Series. Shilt's been a manager of the year and got, manager of the year. He also got a 3rd place finish 1 year with the Cardinals. Bochy needs no introduction. Listen, Rob Thompson's not a big name, but that was an organization. The man was a great coach in that system for a long time. He's an old school guy. We know that Ron Washington's an old school guy, and who also took 2 teams to a World Series in Texas. The point is, I think that with the fans who are skeptical of analytics, I think that when you have have guys in place who have won and who have earned that trustworthiness and that credibility because they've won, when they embrace analytics, when they embrace analytics, I don't think too many fans in those markets are like railing against the manager for saying, yeah, analytics are good. We make use of them because it's good information. I think it, like a young manager like Ali Marmol and other young managers, I just think it's a harder sell to the fan base because they don't see the manager as someone who has proven anything yet. But if a guy's proven he can win old school way, but also embrace the new way and still win as Bochy did in Texas, who the heck wouldn't believe in that guy like 100%, right? I think that's a big part of it.
Yeah, I've always said, Bernie, too, that no matter who the manager was, after the whole incident and how public it was with Mike Shildt and the firing and the philosophical differences, that it didn't matter who was going to manage after Mike Shildt. They were kind of set up in a way where the perception would be that it would have to be someone who would be totally collaborative with the front office and have to go with what they wanted.
And the thing about Ali Marmol, there's some things that he does I think is really good. Like the way he ran the bullpen last year was incredible. It's the only reason they won 83 games. But I don't think he has a chance here. And by the way, I'm not speaking out of school. He and I have talked about that. And he is so closely aligned with John Mozeliak, who is so unpopular, as we know, that it's sort of like the Mozeliak taint. And it's like, I don't think Ali can ever get away from that unless something extraordinary happens and, he wins a World Series. People are just never going to view him as a credible manager, whether that's fair or not. That's just the way it is. Because when they see him, they see John Mozeliak. And that's a really tough thing to separate from. And, he gets ripped for stuff that, listen, man, I've jumped on Ali a lot. But I try to be fair. And it's like people are just waiting for any little thing to go nuts about. And to me, it's a very unfortunate situation. And I don't know whether it makes sense to continue with this because he'll never be accepted by this fan base. That's tough.
Yeah.
Yeah. What a great sports weekend, huh, Bernie? We've got the Cardinals and Phillies this weekend. We've got the Masters. We've got the Frozen Four here in St. Louis. We've got St. Louis City SC. We've got the Battlehawks. It's another great sports weekend in St. Louis, isn't it?
That Western Michigan Denver game last night was phenomenal. I watched every minute of it.
Yeah.
I love that. And hoping the Blues bounce back. I think maybe Minnesota's going to get that first wild card because they got a game in hand. Money Puck gives them about a 76% chance of getting the first wild card. Listen, the Blues, when they won the Stanley Cup in 2009, they didn't go in as like any kind of number one seed or number one wild card or anything else. I mean, they had to fight their way through every round. And I think a team like this team is going to have to be that kind of team that does the same thing. They're not overloaded with talent. They have good depth. But if you look at like the league leaders, other than maybe Robert Thomas with assists, I mean, you're not going to find any players who are going to win individual trophies this year or be put on all-star teams or all NHL teams. I love the fact that the strength in this team is the team. I love that. And those kind of teams are dangerous in the playoffs.
Yeah, it should be fun. Bernie, have a great weekend. Always good to talk to you. That was a lot of fun.
I love talking to you guys. Thanks, Brooke. And thanks, Reddy. Have a great weekend.
You too. See you later.
Bernie.
Bernie Miklasz, story time with Uncle Bernie.
Oh, man. I would love to hear more of those stories behind the scenes because especially, one thing that I do miss about NFL is the NFL locker room stories. The drama. There's always drama surrounding NFL. They're really good at the drama. And then it's amazing what stuff doesn't even get out from behind the scenes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
it's crazy.
It is amazing.
Yeah.
And even when everything was kind of under control here, it's pretty remarkable.
Could you imagine if social media was around back then for that 85 team? Everything that was going on?
Oh man. Oh man. So, and there were some guys like Louis Sharp has had a very well chronicled battle with drug addiction. Earl Farrell, the fullback for that team, did. It's sad. A lot of those guys had to deal with it, and fortunately have overcome a lot of their issues. But man, that, like Bernie said, that team, you don't want to talk about. You don't want to compare what they could have been had they not had drug problems. But the fact of the matter is they did have drug problems. In the last game of that 84 season that Bernie was talking about the game at Washington. I remember John Madden just frothing over the Cardinals, saying, "Oh, they're going to be great," and then they just never reached the pinnacle that they should have.
Oh my
They were really good. They were really
Yeah.
good. Hey, baseball season is underway, and it's time to step up to the plate with DraftKings Pick Six. Think of DraftKings Pick Six as your fastball right down the middle. It's the easiest way to play for cash and take a shot at a big win. Just select 2 or more players and choose if they'll have more or less of a stat. Pick Six is available in most states, including California and Texas, Georgia, Missouri, and more. And you can cash in with your baseball knowledge. New players get $50 in Pick Six credits instantly on just a $5 entry. And it is so easy to use Pick Six from DraftKings. And if you just go to the website, download the app today, and get to work and pick out your players, and you can have a great time utilizing your baseball knowledge and pick up a few bucks. It's pretty cool. For example, if you want to use your baseball knowledge today, take a look at maybe Jacob deGrom, great strikeout pitcher, 7.5 strikeouts. Is he going to go higher or lower? I'll go higher than 7.5 strikeouts for Jacob deGrom. I think that he comes back. And then I'm going to go with Aaron Nola right here in St. Louis. He is at 7.5 for strikeouts too. I'm going to go lower because the Cardinals get the bat on the ball. So I'm going to go Nola lower than 7.5 strikeouts. I'm going to go deGrom higher than 7.5 strikeouts. Bing, bang, boom. Just hit the little tab, and I am good to go. And I'm going to have a ton of fun with DraftKings Pick Six. Utilize your baseball knowledge and have fun today.
Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. Help is available for problem gambling. Call 888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org in Connecticut. Must be 18 and over. Age and eligibility restrictions vary by jurisdiction. Pick Six not available everywhere, including New York and Ontario. Void where prohibited. 1 per new customer. Bonus awarded as non-withdrawable Pick Six credits that expire in 14 days. Limited time offer. See terms at picksix.draftkings.com/promos.
Hello. Welcome back after that DraftKings message. It's us again. Now, we were talking about we just forgot what to do there. Rocky was like, what is going on? It's because we both blanked. Because we were just hanging out, and I just drooled on myself. So that's weird.
Matthew is assuming that we're professional.
I think he is, because, I mean, maybe we were professional in the past, but that's different now, because some of the stuff that has been mentioned today on the show, like hot dogs, are
I'm gonna have
intriguing.
a hot dog tonight.
Yeah, you are, apparently. You're gonna have a lot of those hot dogs tonight, huh?
Just one.
One big one. Anyways, we need to go and talk to Jacob Stanoch. There he is. Okay, I was wondering if you were actually going to be over at Enterprise Center today or not. And
check
look,
out the Bemidji State hoodie. I love it.
Oh,
Well
yes.
Hometown.
I love
Is
it.
Bemidji, Minnesota. Cool.
Yep.
So Matthew was telling me when he walked in today what a weather wuss he is. You don't care at all about the weather in St. Louis today, do you?
Oh God, it's like summer to me all over again. This is what I expect to see end of May when I go home. So when we had the thunderstorms here, it was a blizzard in Bemidji. So it was, just to put it in perspective, when we got rain, I was getting texts and snaps from my family about the inches of snow on the ground in late March, and that's normal. It's normal.
Yeah, I simply would perish, Jacob. I would not survive that whatsoever. For the people who are coming in right now into YouTube, if you didn't know that Jacob is a part of our Sports Hub SEL coverage, he covers the Blues, but also you do play-by-play for Lindenwood Hockey, and you've been a part of the coverage too for Frozen Four, which is so exciting that we have this here in St. Louis. Man, let's talk about that game last night with Western Michigan winning that double overtime thriller.
I mean, there's so much to talk about that game, and it was kind of what you expected. It was going to be the game of the day. When you look at the BU side of it, second game of the day was going to be, is BU just going to destroy Penn State? Kind of seemed like it was a little bit more back and forth, I think some people thought, but it was a bit more of control. But you look at the Western Michigan game, it was the definition of dominance. It was an insane game, back and forth. They locked down Denver in every single aspect up through the first 2 periods. I think, if I remember right, they only allowed 8 shots for the Pioneers through the first 2 periods, while still getting, I believe after 2, it was about 30, I want to say 32-8 in terms of the shots. Western Michigan getting 20 of them in the second period. And it was a game that everyone thought was going to be over after the second period. Western Michigan up 2-0, and just an absolute flip by the Pioneers, which was essentially a complete opposite of what the NCHC championship back in St. Paul just about a month ago or a few weeks ago was, where they also went to double overtime up at the XL Energy Center, where instead of Denver coming back, it was Western Michigan getting 3 goals in the third. But this time it was Denver with an incredible pushback, a lot going on. But I mean, it was an incredible atmosphere, and it's certainly game of the day. And I think certainly the highlight for me was the support by Western Michigan. They're notorious for the Lawson Lunatics, and they showed up in force yesterday. I kind of given the nickname of Kalamazoo South in a way with how they were rocking the Enterprise. It was a fun game to watch, but certainly set me back a couple hours. I was really hoping to be back in St. Charles by 10, but ended up getting back at dang near 1 o'clock in the morning. So hopefully no double overtime on Saturday.
So let's talk about tomorrow. How do you like the matchup, and why do you think one team or the other will win?
Well, I mean, I think my pre-tournament pick was going to be either Boston College or Western Michigan. Western Michigan has been dominant throughout the year. One of very few teams, definitely here in the Frozen Four, that have been in the top 5 consistently from the beginning of the season all the way up to now. And they play a different style of hockey than really anyone has that I've seen in a long time. I nicknamed it gritty but pretty. They play a very, it's a physical style, but they still have a lot of very skillful players. That's kind of how they wore down the Pioneers. But again, talking again about that semifinal yesterday, it to me is, it's one thing when it's their first Frozen Four, but I think to them, it didn't really feel like it was a national semifinal game. And you get that a lot with college hockey, because sometimes you end up playing the same team you play 3 times a year in conference. So I think that helped them out, I think, a bit. But coming into tomorrow, I mean, I think that just their physical style of play is going to match BU very well. I think it'll be relatively close. I mean, this is a BU team that no one thought was going to be here. The past 2 years, they've lost in the semifinals, unable to get over the hump, and now finally into the final here. But I think, the one worry I have for BU was their goal to get just past the semifinal, or is it to, get past the semifinal and also win the whole thing? And just kind of that regroup of taking today to now mentally get ready for tomorrow's game, which, I mean, I think to a lot of people, it's Western Michigan. They've got so many key players, especially with former Prior Lake Laker Alex Bump, for the Southern Minnesotan, and Hampton Slakinski, who is arguably one of the best goaltenders I've ever seen, ever. I would argue, and I've seen him for 4 or 5 years now. We used to play him in high school. That's how long we know the Slakinski brothers over in Western Michigan. And I've seen Hampton, ever since his high school days. He's an incredible goaltender. The 2 goals he let in were almost, impossible to save on just rushes in, got barreled into on the second goal. I really don't think that Western Michigan is just, penetrable to get through for BU. And they're a much different style than Penn State was, and I think that'll throw off BU just a bit in tomorrow's game.
Jacob, I saw on X that you've been talking to some people about their impressions of how the Frozen Four is going so far in St. Louis over Enterprise. What have you heard from people, whether it be fans or just even people coming in to cover the Frozen Four, about how things are going with St. Louis and the Frozen Four?
Well, from what I know the NCAA likes it. I can tell you that for certain. They certainly enjoy the city. They like the Midwest. That's kind of just a Midwest staple. To me, I feel like the atmosphere is there. It's hard to follow up last year. Obviously, you're coming off of Frozen Four in St. Paul, which is probably the best place to have the Frozen Four. Unbiased, a little bit, but I mean, honestly, it was the atmosphere there. I mean, it's a Thursday night game in St. Louis with no super Midwestern teams outside of Western Michigan, yet you still get over 16,000 people there. And I think that's just, people are slowly coming into a place without a real, I shouldn't say without, but, Lindenwood with the hockey program still getting, their feet going. There's not the full support. We're not selling out the Centene, during the weekend, during the weekends in the winter. So just to see that kind of support for college hockey when there's no Blues prospects in the mix, there's not really a lot of localness as well. Every team is 5+ hours away at the minimum. So yeah, I think there's a lot of people that liked it. I don't know if people from Boston liked it as much, but outside of that, I think the overall has been certainly positive about the Frozen Four here in St. Louis, and I certainly couldn't be happier about it because this is St. Louis is essentially my second home outside of Bemidji, so it's fantastic to see and when I talked to Buchagras and just kind of asking like the non-traditional market and how St. Louis is flipped from being just you got an NHL team in a southern city to this is a hockey town now. And seeing that kind of growth and seeing it, especially now, in probably the best time to have him Frozen Four here, it's beyond fantastic.
Jacob, one other quick thing. David Carl talked about a lot as an NHL head coach, and he obviously, the head coach at the University of Denver, worked with Jim Montgomery there when Montgomery was the head coach. What's your read on Carl as a potential NHL head coach?
I mean, he's one of many fantastic coaches that could be moving up. You got a lot of guys who have had, their difference or had their time at the college level. Carl is just a fantastic coach, and obviously his tenure with Denver has been nothing short of just fantastic and successful. I think he could definitely be at the NHL level. Obviously, he could go on a very similar path as Jim Montgomery did. And that's just kind of, I think that's that style of play you get in Denver. And not just with the championship history with the Pioneers, just the style that they have, the way they run their program. It's, eerily similar to, every aspect of it. And I think even at the coaching staff, it's preparing players to go to the NHL. And preparing just people in the organization to be in the NHL. So, you talk about a coach like David Carl, and he easily could be up in the ranks. But, what I've seen from him is that I think he just enjoys being at Denver so much. You would really have to try and pull him away from that Pioneer team to get him into the big show.
All right. Jacob, great work. Thanks so much for the time. We appreciate it. Have a great weekend and enjoy the final tomorrow.
Thank you. Have fun, guys.
You too. Take care.
Thank you so much.
That is Jacob Stanoch. He is one of our Blues reporters here on Sports Hub STL. By the way, David Carl spent 3 years as an assistant for Montgomery at the University of Denver and then succeeded Montgomery as the Pioneers head coach. So I would think that he would want to follow in those footsteps. And Monty was hired as the Stars coach right out of the University of Denver. Jimmy Monty. Yeah, there we go.
Now we have overarching to get to.
We do. And I guess we should tell people about the Battlehawks that they can get great.
Should.
Yeah, the Battlehawks in action this week, taking on, shall we say Kaka first? Kaka! And Jordan Teamu and the Washington Defenders are in town this weekend. But Battlehawks fans, you need to be able to catch Battlehawks Hub weekly. Available on the Sports Hub STL YouTube page with Luke Slaybaugh and Judy Strotter as they get you set for the Battlehawks coverage. And all of the Sports Hub STL Battlehawks coverage is presented by Lee's Famous Recipe Chicken. With the new Lee's Famous Recipe Chicken Battlehawks box, you see it on the screen right there. You can score up to 30% off Battlehawks tickets, plus get 4 of their famous breast strips and a side of potato wedges for just $8.99, only at Lee's Famous Recipe Chicken. There we go. Okay,
Battle
overarching.
Hawks. So we do have a couple stories to get to, but this is just coming out. We have a college hold-in right now, and it's happening at the University of Tennessee. And we probably should have predicted this based off of his name, but Nico Iamaleava, or
Iamaleava.
it actually does spell Amaliva, basically. He is not attending spring practice. So this is kind of a big deal right now because Pete Thamel is reporting that he did not attend spring practice today for the University of Tennessee. The practice no-show comes as a surprise to University of Tennessee football as he's been in conversations with them about a new contract. So we have a college football hold-in currently. This is the new era of NIL, Randy.
It is. I wonder if he's going to class. Probably not.
Do you think that class even matters?
He took notice of the fact that Josh Heupel has not recruited a high-level quarterback or brought in a transfer portal quarterback for the last couple of years because Heupel has so much faith in Iamaleava. And so he knows that he's got him over a barrel. He's got leverage against them.
He holds the cards.
And they have, I believe, the second highest, if not the highest, NIL budget in all of college athletics. So he's going to, he's playing before. How many people do they hold in that stadium? 110,000? Something
a
like
lot.
That?
I would have to, I don't know off the top of my head.
They always went back and forth with Michigan for the biggest stadium. Yeah.
Yeah.
But he knows that they're making a ton of money off of his presence, and he knows that they can't win without him. So he's putting the pressure on him. It's great.
That's the part of it where I know that he will be villainized a lot today because we really don't hear about that often with the college hold-in. And then people hear about the money and they're like, oh, come on, this is a greedy kid. But to your point, Tennessee kind of showed their cards, and Heupel showed his cards of how much they were depending on him, especially going into the season and in the past season too, of how much they're relying on him, that he's the guy, there's no one else. College sports is a business now, and the players are allowed to treat it as such.
And if I'm not mistaken, Tennessee added a 10% NIL surcharge to the price of tickets for games.
Yeah.
And I'm sure Iamaleava saying, okay, after I came here, you added a 10% surcharge. I'm going to get me some. So I have no problem with him doing it. And
I wonder how much he was making prior to this.
It's if Bo Prabula, that's the first name of the Mizzou guy, right? He's allegedly making 2.5. So if
2.5.
Yeah. So Iamaleava has to be making 3.5, doesn't he?
He has to be making just a lot of money.
The Georgia guy that went to Miami,
Carson
I think got
Beck?
6. Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm assuming that he'd want more than Carson Beck or around what Carson Beck wants.
You'd think so.
Or is getting, you think?
Right. I absolutely. And Beck wound up, he originally entered the NFL draft, pulled out and decided to enter the transfer portal and go to Miami because Miami was going to pay him more than he would get as a last draft day pick in the NFL, a third day draft pick. He'd get a lot more money at the University of Miami. So that's one of the reasons that he went there. I wonder if he
wants to be like Cam Ward, where he can really just pump up those stats so that somebody like Tennessee will take him.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, good point. And Beck, by the way, he had a Lamborghini at Georgia. I wonder if he just got to keep it or if it was like leased to him free.
I don't know. I don't know how that works exactly.
So he had to return it?
He'll get a new one. Was that the one that was stolen or no?
I think it was.
Was that because one of them was stolen, wasn't it? I don't know. Him and his girlfriend at the time, vehicles were stolen. Ray said, should players have to pay back their scholarship if they're making a bunch of money on their NIL? I'm assuming is what the rest of NIL.
They're student athletes. So they don't have to pay back their scholarship.
Are they even student athletes anymore if we're talking about the NIL realm of things?
No.
I just can't take
it's amateur sports at this point.
I can't take people who send those kind of texts in seriously. It's like, do you think that the kid working at the bar also needs to pay back any scholarship money he got because he had the audacity to profit from his work and skill? How dare he?
Yeah, if you're working as
What are we doing here?
a clerk in the law library or something like that and getting paid by the school there.
You're profiting from work and skill. Why is that any different than, like, yes, this person's skill is more highly rated than yours. Welcome to capitalism.
Yeah,
I think that the big part of this that you were talking about earlier, Randy, too, is that we really want to villainize these players for the money they're getting. And it is an exorbitant amount of money. I do not doubt that whatsoever, that this is obviously, I understand that aspect of it, but think about how much money these universities have been making off these players for years.
Yeah.
And I'm so glad that finally
Billions.
these players are able to profit off their name, image, and likeness. There are statistics that show that especially if it's a college football team is performing well, that enrollment goes up. So it's more profitable for the university to have great athletics. And finally, these players can capitalize off that.
I believe, if I'm not mistaken, that the highest number of applications the University of Missouri ever had, and I think this is still the case, was 2008 after they were number 1 in 2007.
Yeah.
And at that time, Chase Daniel could have gone into the Mizzou store, north end of the stadium, and seen all the number 10 jerseys that they were selling. That was his number, but he wasn't able to get anything from that. He wasn't able to take anything from them. So I'm glad that the worm has turned and that the players have recognized that they have the power in this situation, and I'm glad that they're taking advantage of it. It's preposterous to me that these 50 and 60-year-old men were taking home millions of dollars from the $7 billion that networks were paying the NCAA for basketball on the backs of the players who really weren't getting anything.
Yeah, and the colleges then will have the audacity to email students and former students asking for more money for their university.
Yeah, unbelievable. So,
I still get emails from my old college where they're asking for money. I'm like, no. Like,
and by
what are
the
you
way,
talking about?
Because it is the Wild West right now.
Yeah.
Like, if you're USC, don't you call up I Am Aliva and say, hey, what'll it take?
You know, they're all doing that anyways. And I'm sure that that's part of,
Oh, there's so much poaching.
I know
going on.
that could be considered not okay to do, right? Is that against NCAA rules and it's poaching players to an extent?
I think, it's against every rule in the book, both written and unwritten.
But who even cares about the NCAA
Nobody.
at this point? They have lost their relevance because they didn't get ahead of this NIL stuff.
So I can tell this now. Statute of limitations is passed, right?
I love this.
So Bobby Petrino, one of your all-time favorites.
Should we frame that like because I covered the University of Arkansas.
Yeah. Right. Yeah.
Not
thank you very much. I appreciate that. So Petrino was in town for a National Football Foundation luncheon a few years ago. Bobby Petrino was when he was the head coach at Missouri State. And he said, yeah, we go to our players who played with players that we like, whether in all-star games or in school. They all know each other. He said, so we'll have our guys call and say, hey, are you happy there? And if a player is not happy at a particular school, well, hey, we've got an NIL deal for you, and we'd love to have you come here. So they just use the players as their agents.
Exactly.
And I'm sure
there's
that's
workarounds
happening all over the place.
Eric Cleveland says, Brooke, they have always been paid 100%. I know that there's been money prior to NIL, but what I like about NIL is now that there's transparency. It's out there in the forefront because these are college kids at the end of the day. I know that they're making a lot of money. They're technically adults. So if they screw it up, it is on them at the end of the day. But I like that now there's more transparency so that they can advocate for themselves more.
And there were a lot of players that were getting paid. Now every player is getting paid. Eli told me a couple of years ago that the average starter in the SEC was going to make $100,000. It used to be that your left guard wasn't making money. But now every single player is making money.
We talked about it yesterday, Stu Durando's piece, that the Billikens revenue sharing means that every player from the freshman on the roster all the way through Robbie Avila will get money from the revenue sharing program.
Exactly.
That's nice.
There was definitely a time not too long ago at SLU where maybe my guess is if Tatum would have come to SLU, he would have been paid some good money. But before 5 years ago, there wasn't an awful lot of money being thrown around at St. Louis University.
But even think about how much this has benefited women in sports now, too, where they're able to make more money. We know that a lot of these women basketball players are making more money in college than they will be in the WNBA. And I think that also helps the WNBA with their profile. It's getting bigger in college sports. But I think people just always hyper focus on these quarterbacks who are making just millions of dollars. But there's a trickle down effect with NIL because even prior, like say a volleyball player wanted to host their own camp, they couldn't use their name, image, and likeness and profit from it. Now they could do something like that. Yeah.
By the way, I heard there's a current NFL player that went to high school here, then went to a big university, is having some success in the National Football League. And you know how Isaac Bruce has a free camp every year?
Yeah.
I heard this player's asking for $500 for a kid to come to his camp. Running back. $500, I heard.
What do I feel like? I feel like we know. I feel like you give us some good hints
I'm
here.
not saying
$500? Are you serious?
$500. Yeah, that's what I heard.
Why? For kids?
Yeah,
Like
kids
you
camp.
need to leave like the kids out of that situation. Kids should be able to do it for
Should
free.
be a free camp, shouldn't it?
It should be.
I agree.
I don't
with
like
you.
that. I don't like that
100%.
whatsoever. No.
Yeah. By the way, a piece up on the UFL page at ESPN.com, why the UFL works in St. Louis. It just really feels like such an NFL environment. So you want to check it out. Kevin Seifert wrote that just up at ESPN.com. So what are you watching this week? Before we get out of here, we've got Cardinals, we've got Blues tomorrow night, we've got Battlehawks, we've got Sunday night St. Louis City SC. Hope they score a goal. What are you watching?
I'm not like the biggest golf watcher, but I love the Masters.
It's great.
And
to
so,
snooze.
yes, I think that the Masters is always really cool to see. I want to enter myself in the lottery one day to try to get a ticket eventually to be able to go out there, because that's like one of my bucket list sports event items to go to. And we have a tweet here from Derek Gould. Oh, yeah. I saw some people talking about this on the chat.
Oh, how
So
about
Skip
that?
Schumacher will be the bench coach for Team USA, and Matt Holliday will be the hitting coach.
A couple of his 2009 teammates here with the St. Louis Cardinals.
Yeah, that's pretty big news. So I'll do that. I'll watch some Cardinals, of course, too.
Mhm.
And
That'll be great.
there's
Then,
a lot of stuff going on
two
this
TVs
weekend.
at one time on Sunday afternoon with actually 3 Cardinals and Phillies, Defenders and Battlehawks, and then the Masters. So it'll be a busy week. It'll be a great sports weekend. Hope you enjoy it. Don't forget, we have post game after each Cardinal game, after the Blues tomorrow night, and the Blues do start late, so you'll be able to stay up and check that out. And after the Battlehawks on Sunday, a 2:00 start at the Dome. So check out everything that's going on here at Sports Hub STL. Matthew, what part of this weekend you'll have the St. Louis City SC post game on Sunday night, correct?
Thank you very much. As I will.
Yeah.
And also, we have Blues Hub Weekly with Jamal Mayers,
Sunday
who
night.
I'm sure will be very excited.
That will be happening before the City post game. So we'll have.
Are you sure?
Blues, it better. We'll have Blues. We'll have Blues post.
We'll see.
Blues Weekly post game show edition at around 7 p.m. City post game around 8 p.m. Battlehawks post game around 5 p.m. Cards post game around 4 p.m. So Sunday is a completely full stack, and like you mentioned, Cardinals post game around 4 p.m. on Saturday, and then a late Blues post game at 11:30.
Cool. And don't forget, Cardinals free TV tonight, Matrix Midwest and Channel 4. So you'll be able to check that out. Brooke, did you have fun today?
I did.
It was good. We got
Yeah.
some great stuff from Bernie. If you missed Bernie, you got to go back and watch the Bernie segment. It was a lot of fun. It was great.
Mhm.
Matthew, great job as always. Thank you very much.
Pleasure.
And we appreciate you being a part of the show as well here on Sports Hub STL. We will see you Monday morning at 10:02.